I'm going to say here, you already know what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you right now that the very, very best thing that you can do is, if you have committed yourself to a relationship, you need to stay committed to that relationship. And if you're having a hard time with that, if you're struggling with that, then you need to get help in refocusing you on that relationship. And it can be done. Hey guys, Ron Lyons here with Lyons Tactical, and today we want to talk a little bit about something that's maybe a very touchy subject and something that is going to hit close to home for many of you. I know the subject is certainly hit close to home for me, and it's one of those things in law enforcement that hopefully you're never actually involved in. It's like a shooting. If you're in law enforcement, chances are good that you're going to be involved in an officer involved shooting or something like that at some point. Hopefully that never happens. Many people make it through their entire career and never get shot at, never have to shoot anybody. Unfortunately, sometimes that's not the case. And that's the same thing with this other subject that we're going to talk about, which is maintaining fidelity on the job. And that is a very, very, very challenging subject, because as cops we kind of create our own culture, not unlike other professions, but the difference in this particular case is that we all depend on each other in life and death type situations. And what happens is you start to relate very well to other people within our culture, but you don't relate as well to people outside the culture. So, you get into law enforcement and you have a life, whatever that is that you come from into law enforcement, and then through a series of your field training and doing the job, after a couple of few years, you start to become a bit hardened to the outside world. And there's a lot of things you can do, and I encourage you to do those things to keep your connections to the outside world. Those things would include having friends that are not cops, doing things that are not cop-related activities, and doing things like that. Just basically maintaining lots and lots of chains and anchors to your former life, so that you don't get just so lost in this world of law enforcement that you can't relate to anything else. Because one of the byproducts of getting too involved in law enforcement, just going deep in law enforcement, is the fact that you always think like a cop, you act like a cop, you do everything in your life, you talk, you argue, everything you do, the way you see people, it all comes back to your perspective as a law enforcement officer. And so when it comes time for relationship stuff, having a relationship with someone who is not in law enforcement or who doesn't understand you as a cop can be very, very challenging. It's just as challenging for them as it is for you, because you've changed, you've gone through a change, and you've metamorphosized, if that's a word, yourself into something completely different. Now it's just a monster to argue with you now. Because you have to win, right? You're a cop, and you're constantly suspecting everything, because by nature you're a cop. You have a suspicious nature. You have to, in order to do the job. And it just gets very difficult and challenging to do that job and to continue to relate to someone who is outside of the job, even if you were with them before you started doing the job. And the next thing you know, as you're working some of these shifts and you're drawn very close to someone else who's in law enforcement, and it may not be another patrol officer or whatever that you do, it could be someone in dispatch or something, but someone else that's very close to the business, to the job. And before you know it, you have an attraction to that person, and it's many times more than just a physical attraction. It's an attraction on a level that people outside of law enforcement can't understand. And what this does, obviously, is leads many of us to stray away from our marriage and to make bad choices and bad decisions that ultimately end up doing nothing but hurting people. Now, infidelity and stuff like that is common outside of law enforcement. You certainly don't have to be a cop in order to participate in stuff like that. We know that. It's all over the place. Many marriages fail. But when you're a cop, you have to be even more careful than a lot of people in other professions to not actually go out and engage in some of these activities and make some of these decisions that are ultimately going to pull you away from someone that you committed yourself to, someone that you actually married and, made all of these promises to, and now you have slid away from that and you're in a different situation and it's just not good. One of the things that happens when you do get into these relationships is you tend to start losing the ability to do the actual job as good. Because here's the thing, you're trying to answer calls and doing things like that, but all you're thinking about is officer so-and-so or dispatcher so-and-so or whatever. And you're sending texts and you're doing phone calls and you're being sneaky in order to get around your marriage and to be able to have this other relationship and stuff. And before you know it, it's completely distracted you from being the very best police officer that you can be. When I went astray in my past, and I'll talk about it, it's nothing that I'm happy about, nothing that I'm proud of, and it's something that I've never done again and never would do again, but it's something that you guys need to know, something that you need to be aware of, and something that you're certainly going to be faced with probably at some point in your career if you have not been already. And the thing is, a million people around me at the time told me, don't do it, it's a bad idea. But of course, the attraction, the all of the feelings and all of the things that kind of surround those things, it's exciting. And you're a cop, you feed on adrenaline anyways. You love that excitement, you love that risk factor, you just feed on that. If you don't, I don't know why you're in law enforcement, because so much of that is paramount to being in that job. So here comes this option, this decision for you to make. And everyone tells you don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But you always think that your situation is different. Oh, mine's different. Or, oh, you don't understand how bad my marriage is. Or you don't know how this, or you don't know that. Do you know how many times that exact same song and dance has been repeated over and over and over? Guess what? Your marriage is likely not the worst marriage in the world. You're just looking for an excuse to go out and do what it is that you want to do now, which is really stupid and a very poor choice. You're hired as a law enforcement officer for your ability to make good choices, but when it comes to this stuff, we tend to forget all about that. We make bad choices. So a million people around me said, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But me, feeling like my situation was different and all those other dynamics, I made the choice to stray away from my marriage and actually engage in, an extramarital relationship. And it was a horrible choice. It was a bad choice. It has nothing to do with the people that were involved. The people involved were a lot like me. Same reasons and the same issues and the same everything, bring all of that together. Really good people in tough situations making bad choices. So, I'm going to say here, you already know what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you right now that the very, very best thing that you can do is, if you have committed yourself to a relationship, you need to stay committed to that relationship. And if you're having a hard time with that, if you're struggling with that, then you need to get help in refocusing you on that relationship. And it can be done, because the good news about my situation is that when I stepped away from it, I went to marriage counseling. Thankfully, I had a wife who was willing to actually stay with me through all of that stuff, and she shouldn't have. She should have left my ass sitting on the side of the road. That's what I deserved for what I did. But she agreed to go to marriage counseling, and luckily, that marriage counseling was phenomenal. We found a very strong Christian-based counselor, and you literally have to work on that. It's not something you can just go a couple of times. You can go to your training as a law enforcement officer, and you can get your certification and whatever you want your certification in law enforcement, and you feel like it's fixed, it's done. Now you're this or now you're that. You go to your field training officer training, now you're an FTO. You go learn how to use an intoxilizer, now you're an intoxilizer operator. You go to a few sessions with a therapist, you're not automatically fixed. It's something that requires an awful lot of effort and time and focus on your part. So what you've got to do is make the commitment not only to trying to rebuild and repair your relationship with your significant other, but you've got to invest time and effort into that counseling, into that repair process to get yourself back. So looking backwards now, it was a horrible, horrible mistake that I made. It's something that I wouldn't wish on anybody. It seemed wonderful at the time. It seemed like one of the best things ever. It made sense. There was a million reasons for it. But it's all a lie. And you don't figure that out until after the fact. So the best thing you can do, and you know it when you're in it. You know it when you're in it. You know as sure as I'm sitting here right now saying this, you know that what I'm saying is right. The very best thing you can do is commit yourself to your significant other and be that person that you're supposed to be. Get the help that you need in order to restore or to never have to go down this road. I'm not, necessarily assuming that you've already broken a relationship. I'm saying that if you feel the pull, if you feel like you're losing touch with your significant other, if you don't feel the love inside as strong as you once did, do what you have to do to try and repair or save that before it's too late. Don't just throw caution to the wind, and certainly don't make bad choices through this process. You know right, you know wrong, do the right, and do it consistently. Do it every single time. Be better than you have to be. There's already a staggering number of broken marriages out there. You don't have to add to that. We don't need more. We actually need success stories. We need stories of people who are actually able to build a good marriage and make things work. That's who you need to be. So tell you what, guys, it's not an easy subject. It's a very difficult subject. There's few things in law enforcement that can be, tougher than this. As a matter of fact, some of those officer-involved shooting situations and stuff may actually be a little better in the dealing with it and everything else than going through a divorce like this. So anyways, I'm not sitting here trying to pretend like it's easy and that this is a walk in the park. It's not. But the help is available, the assistance is available, and you already have inside you everything you need in order to guide you. Your compass is already set in the proper orientation, or you wouldn't be in law enforcement. So don't sit here and tell me, well, I didn't know. You knew. You may still make a bad choice, but you know the difference between right and wrong. So guys, that's going to wrap it up today. If you would, be sure and subscribe to this channel. And I'd certainly like to hear your comments and your thoughts on this. Yeah, I've heard many things. I've been in law enforcement, around law enforcement for many years. I've seen the best, I've seen the worst. So you're not going to tell me anything that I don't already know. You're certainly not going to tell me that your situation is unique and different and that, I can't relate to it. That's fine. That's a cop-out. Get it? Cop-out? It's a cop-out. It's a cop copping out. You know the truth. Stick to the truth. Leave your comments below. Let me know what's worked for you. Let me know about your situations. You know what? We've got to be honest with each other. If we're going to take care of each other, if we're going to look out for each other, if we're going to be the community that we need to be for each other, this is the kind of stuff we're going to have to tackle, as uncomfortable as it is. Anyways, guys, until the next video, another tip, trick, and hack video. Stay safe. God bless. And we'll see you on that video.